is Dr. Azadeh Weber. I have a doctorate in clinical psychology, and I teach aerial acrobatics as well as run a farm up in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. I'm here with Dr. Mohsen Hormanish. He is a passive solar architect and an artist, and he's here in an author, and he's written a book about economy and how we need a paradigm shift in our economy so we can start living better.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the slides now.
Well, let me explain something first about a few items about centralization, because what happened, everything has become centralized. And from local economy, we have gone to global, and national, and from national, we have gone to global. So it's so interdependent. One little change in anything all of a sudden tips over, the whole economy of a country or the whole global system. Now, centralization means cultivating accumulation. Now, when something is centralized, that means, for example, something has to be brought to a center, and then from that center has to be dispersed.
Okay, now, let me just, thanks for going into centralization. So just to clarify, anyone who may be watching this video, we're talking about centralization of the money supply, right, and the resources.
Economy, or anything. That centralization of the economic system is like, we go from local to a state, from a state to national, from national to global. Now, every time it becomes more centralized, that means all the resources have to be brought together to a center and then dispersed. So that constitute a lot of energy to bring it to the center and disperse it. And that's one of the cost of the economy becomes transportation and transmission. So now if it's psychological concentration, centralization, it becomes what? Self-centerism or self-nicity. If it's psychological. Now, if it's emotional centralization, a person becomes very conceited and it becomes narcissism.
Right. And so we want to decentralize our concerns psychologically so we can care for others in the environment as well as ourselves, right?
Because if I'm selfish, I center everything around me. I create self-nicity, narcissism, and all that stuff. So therefore, culturally, I become esoteric.
Okay.
Esoteric is everything brought to a center. However, everything in creation is very exoteric. There is diversity, and then within that diversity, God has created longing. That longing in diversity induces unity, not uniformity.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm following.
Centralization, it causes compression, and then you have to use a force, the expansion, and then also. What is it? Expression, compression, and expression. So when you have to bring things to a point, and then from that point to disperse it to all other people, the consumer, that is the major cost of energy source in economy.
Mm-hmm. And so that's why, as a solar architect, passive solar architect, you've seen that it's very hard for people to have this sort of off-grid, building structure because of the economy, right?
Yeah.
So the economy is keeping people from living in healthier ways. Is that correct?
Exactly. So there's a slide that you have that I sent you. It's called solagritecture. If you bring that in, a solagritecture in your collection. Solagritecture means solar, agriculture, architecture. Those are the basic needs of a family. Now, solar is free. And if you look at everything is in nature, if it's done in micro scale, it's very free because it doesn't need to bring it together and take it out to the consumer. So now,
agriculture, I like that. Okay, so I'm going to start sharing my slides that I have. for this presentation.
Now, there is a saying by Prophet Muhammad that says, if the usury is not entered economy, nothing centralizes. That means the rich gets richer and poor gets poorer, because that usury is the cost of transmission of economy and money. Now, for example, if all the energy that I'm using to move my car is oil, the oil has to be brought to a company, refined, and then dispersed. So there's energy to bring things together and then disperse it. Food, I produce massive amount of food, I bring it to a center and disperse it. So you notice everything we use in economy, if it's a national or global economy, it requires transportation and transmission.
Okay.
And that's the cost of the economy. That's therefore everybody, for food, for energy, for gas, it has to be on a grid. PG&E, for example, your electricity has to come on a grid. So that means we cultivate a culture of grid system, and grid system is entropical.
Okay. So we have this universe picture right here. It's very beautiful colors.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you look at this picture, which is just this tiny little picture, Earth in the whole creation is not even a speckle of dust. So why have we become so arrogant?
Good question. So centralization cultivates grid system.
Yeah.
So we talked about that, and the grid system is entropical. So
right.
One of the basic needs of society is energy, right? And so there's centralized energy sources and decentralized energy sources. And we're going to be talking about, pivoting the economy over to decentralized energy sources. And not because what you think, it's not because we think climate change, everyone be scared, run, it's just because we're not doing decentralized energy sources because of climate change. We've seen, in the past few years that scientists are manipulating us, when it comes to COVID and, these sort of things. What we're saying is that these decentralized energy sources should be used so that we can get off the grid system, correct?
If you look at here in this chart, if you start from up here, which is the sun, that's a flux. We'll talk about that later. That's decentralized energy sources. That means everybody on Earth is equally can use it for free, because anything which is God's blessing is always free. And then from then we get biomass, which is trees. Now we can use the trees and burn it and create heats and all that. But that's starting from entropy. And then, stored energy sources like oil, or let's say nuclear. All of that is to create heat. When heat is generated, we can maybe mechanically turn a turbine and produce electrical energy. And from electrical energy, we go to light energy. From light energy, here we go, to electronic, which is electricity. We go to electronic. From electronic, we go to what? We go to electromagnetic waves, and also magnicity. And then from there we go to what? To cellular trees. It's not these are cellular, these are not trees, these are really electronic trees for dispersion and all that. And we get to the cell phone at the end. So you notice every time we go through this loop, there is an energy loss, transmission loss from one state to another. By the time we get all the way to here, the efficiency of that is very low with respect to the nature. So every time we go from one conversion to another to get to all cellular industry, then we have an energy loss. That energy loss is pollution, and we call it entropy, because it's disorder with respect to the environment.
So sun is very decentralized, as is the bioenergy. But as you move along to, let's say, like in oil, you have to have oil reserves, and those are in only certain places of the world. And nuclear, you need like a big factory. Then when we get to computers, you need what do you need? Servers on the back end.
Yeah. You have
Cloud,
so many dependencies.
cloud, and then that becomes more and more centralized, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
You see what happens here? If you look at, for example, oil is a very concentrated and centralized energy sources. It's not, as we see in the next slide, it's not a flux. These are things I did back in 1977 for my doctorate thesis. So still, because it's still the same thing.
Okay, so here we are at the next chart.
Yeah, if you look at this, you have resource application. We have the choices to make what resources we can use in our daily life. For example, we need food, we need materials, we need heat, we need chemical energy, we need mechanical energy, and also we need electrical energy. Now, if you look, there's two ways we can get this. One of them is through flux. Flux means ever flowing, like solar energy, sun, air, earth, water, magnetic fields, fusion and fission in centripetal context. And then we have a stored energy sources at the bottom. A stored energy like fission and fusion of the matter, oil, gas, and coal and biomass. So if you go through the lower part, which is called mechanical conversion, it's governed by energy. We call it energy. Energy is stored. Synergy is flux. It's free. So therefore, we create, when we go through the bottom bottom of the chart, we create energy induces entropy. That's why energy system is governed by entropy, ever increasing disorder. And also it's governed by efficiency. Efficiency means a number way less than 1. Okay, so either we can go produce our food, material, heat, chemical, mechanical, or electrical energy from this lower part, or we can go up to here to flux, which is, let's say, solar energy, air, earth, water, magnetic field, and also centripetal fusion and fission. So this kind of conversion is the nature of this. The nature of the upper part is synergy. Synergy means cohesiveness, symbiotic relation. And then it's governed by the law of centropy. That means ever increasing order. The bottom one is ever increasing disorder. So this is called by sufficiency. Sufficiency, if you put 1 grain of wheat in the ground, you get 7. You put a corn, you get 700. You put a pomegranate seed, you get 7,000. So you notice for every one, there is no equation. It all of a sudden sufficiency is a number way more than 1. Efficiency is a number way less than 1. So that's called architectural or design conversion that produces these technological application or energy processes that we need. We can do our processes from the upper part, or we can do the processes at the bottom part. The bottom part is centralized energy sources. The other one is this decentralized synergy flux.
Okay, you passed your doctoral dissertation.
Oh, thank you. So can you give me my degree now? And not holding me?
You have it back. Okay, so here we are at the centralization and decentralization paradigms.
Yeah, let me see if I can make it bigger so I can see. I should have brought my glasses here. You notice here we have centralization and decentralization. These are the paradigm that we either can go with this or with that. So you notice with centralization, there is always compression. When you center something, you're compressing it. Can I go get my glasses?
Oh, right. Yeah. So
just 1 second. Let me get my glasses.
Okay, so like a good example of centralization could be like being compressed into a city, correct? Instead of living out in the country. and out in the country and off grid with your off grid lifestyle, and hopefully, inshallah, energy sources.
Yeah.
And food sources that you can grow on the farm. So I was just talking when you were getting your glasses about how living in the cities is a very compressed, centralized way to live. You're on the grid. You are paying your PG&E bill. You are buying food from Safeway or whatever grocery store has like hundreds of chains around. Okay, grid slavery.
Centralization causes compression because you have to compress toward the center.
So how does it create inflation?
Well, because we'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about economics, because what happened when you create an entropy, we'll get to the bottom of this chart. When you create entropy, that rate of entropy is the rate of what? Inflation. And also it's the rate of national debt that they have to print money with. Okay. Now, so that's why, centralization causes compression. Decentralization causes what? Expansion. When you expand yourself, then you are more relaxed than when you are compressed. When you are compressed, you are stressed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Now, so therefore, it creates a worldview that we call esoteric. When it's centralized, it's esoteric. When it's decentralized, it's exoteric. That means away from the center. That means diversity, not uniformity. Diversity, God has put a longing in diverse, all the trees, there's no two leaves, no two petals of flowers are the same. But they all have a longing for unity. That longing in every living creation causes what? Unity. But it's within diversity. All the trees no two trees in the forest are the same, but they have longing for unity. No two cells in human body is the same, but they have longing for unity. None of us.
That makes sense how the longing and like that, the pain of longing and the heartache of longing brings things together. It's like, for example, like when there's like a national disaster or there's some sort of crisis, how like it brings people together, it brings families together, because in a way, that's the heartache, creates the unity.
When you go to help people, what do? You don't concentrate, you decentralize yourself.
When you go to where?
When you try to help others, you decentralize. That means you give some of yourself away to others. When I become conceited, or selfish, then I concentrate everything to me. And that's psychological esotericism or psychological self-necessity or selfishness. So that therefore, if I'm centralized on the next one, you'll be on the grid. You have to be on the grid when you centralize. No, the last one, that wasn't finished.
Okay.
Yeah. See the fourth one, it says, on the grid and then off the grid. Now, when you are energy, entropy, and efficiency, you are on the grid. When you put your lifestyle, you cultivate synergy, centropy, and sufficiency. That's where the word ne'mat and barakat comes. That means, all of a sudden you put one seed, you get 70. You put your one corn, you get 700. You put one pomegranate, you get 7,000. So there is no efficiency in that. It's all sufficiency. That means, so the centralization is governed by energy, entropy, and what? Efficiency. Decentralization is governed by synergy, centropy, and sufficiency. That's how creation was created. So now, now if you go a little bit lower, you notice that centralized energy sources, like we saw in the last slide, and you have decentralized energy sources like solar. So
so like if your internet provider only doesn't provide internet out into the country, you need to move back on the grid to get internet.
Yeah, that's why
it's not slow internet or something like that.
The grid has a cost. When you're off the grid, there is no cost. So all of a sudden, when you add up all the grids that we have cultivated in modern society or modern culture, you notice a lot of them is transmissionary cost, transmission energy sources, which is waste and entropy. That means we have to induce a lot of entropy in order to have a velocity of culture. So now next one, if you go centralized economy, decentralized economy, then we have global gross economy versus indigenous local growth.
Well, if you think about it, like if you are in a state of sufficiency and you have everything you need living off the grid and you're happy, there's not much economics in that. And you're not going to be like running through the rat race trying to be efficient.
Well, yeah, then because when you deal with the earth and local growth and soil agriculture, you are looking at sufficiency. As I said, all of a sudden you put 1 grain of wheat in the ground, God blesses to 70 pieces. You put 1 grain of corn, God blesses us to 700. You put 1 grain of pomegranate, God blesses us to 7,000. So it's all sufficiency. So therefore, there is no inflation effect. Centralization causes inflation effect. And the grid is slavery. There is non-inflationary effect in decentralization. So one of them is causes in the centralization. It has an illing system. There are systems which is constantly ill and becomes on and on becomes pandemic.
Yeah.
And the other one is healing function. We have to make a distinction between system and function. Function is biological, system is mechanical. So therefore, centralization causes modernization, that constantly you have to increase the velocity of culture. And then the other one, the healing functions, induces civilization. So there's a contrast here between modernization and civilization.
Got it. Okay.
So therefore, it brings us to whole paradigm. Paradigm is how we view the creation, how we view creator and creation. That's a paradigm, that's referred to as ideology. Ideology is how you view creator and creation.
Yeah, ideology, or we could think of it as like religion or something. This kind of looks like Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, with ideology and religion at the very base.
Yeah. So therefore, our ideology cultivates our philosophy. The way, and our philosophy, it goes in our eyes and soul and mind and heart, and how we view the whole world, how we view all the affairs. And that's, it can be synergetic, synergy or energy. Am I looking at energy or synergy? So you see that? My ideology direct me, either I look at synergy or energy. My ideology direct me to look at entropy or centropy. My ideology direct me to sufficiency or efficiency.
Right. So the mechanical ideology, the secular mechanical ideology that started in the Enlightenment period will lead to entropy.
Yeah. See, energy, process, procedure, and practices is governed by entropy and efficiency.
And then if you are in that mechanical ideology and you're in that state of efficiency where you're always trying to be more efficient, you never are going to feel whole with yourself, because like you said, efficiency is always less than 1.
Yeah, and sufficiency is more than 1. That's why I gave you 3 examples. If a grain of wheat becomes 70, you put 10 gallons of gas, you get at best 10-15% efficiency. It's always less than 1, but sufficiency is always way less than 1, and that's what called barakat.
Okay.
The barakat. So therefore, you put 1 grain of wheat, you get 70. You get 1 grain of corn, you get 700. You get 1 seed of pomegranate, you get 7,000.
So just looking at this chart, depending on what ideology the culture has, that's going to inform family dynamics, lifestyle, culture. It's going to, the ideology depends upon the education. So like right now there's a big homeschool, movement in my community. So that's because, these homeschoolers, we have a different ideology than the mainstream ideology.
Yeah, that's why, when I become entropical, I produce what? Pandemic. No, that pandemic doesn't have to be, it could be health, it could be economy, it could be ecology. All types of pandemic is because of entropical procedure, process, procedure, and practice.
Mhm.
All pandemic. Now we have economic pandemic, we have personal pandemic, we have health pandemic, we have all kind of pandemics. But anytime it's the roots of it is entropy,
But you're
then
not gonna, like, for example, solve the family pandemic. What's breaking up families. That family pandemic with a vaccine. You need something more centropical.
yeah, it has to be. Now, what happens, that goes us back to Avicenna, or you can go Beauchamp, the French scientist. They were follower, or let's say Bruno Groening. There are many people in different cultures. Confucius, they advocated host theory, not germ theory. So the germ theory, we produce pharmaceutical to kill the germs. In host theory of Avicenna, we make our body function synergetically, centropically, so we are not hosting any germs, so they cannot, when they come in our body, they come and go out.
Can you
So
say
that's
something about media on this? Yeah, I do like the Avicenna and the host theory and the germ.
Beauchamp in French. I mean,
I
Bruno
mean, like
Groening.
Stomp versus posture.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
how
from
does
there
the
you go in.
ideology affect the media?
Well, what happens if you go through all these various steps that you have here, then it comes to a culture, lifestyle. Collective lifestyle becomes culture. Now, culture is governed by education. The way now they are teaching us to be objective, specialized, okay, and focused. Okay, that's very entropical. They have to teach us to be what? Peripheral vision.
Right. So focused is, I
Let me
guess you would
finish.
say, centralized.
Peripheral vision, and we have to be subjective and self-sufficient, not specialized, because as I become more specialized, I know more and more about less and less until I know everything about nothing. So it's better to know something about everything than everything about nothing.
Hmm.
So now the media takes all of that, and through media, it doesn't have to be through radio, through whatever means, the media introduce that, and sometimes when they introduce that, it's like a hearsay, and it gets altered, and it becomes the way they want to be presented. So all of a sudden they create duality, whether you have to be left or right. If you're left, you hate the right. If you're right, you hate the left. So all of a sudden their society is fragmented. So the media has created something that George Gerbner, the great psychologist at Chicago University, defined as cultivating theory, and wrote many books about it. 4 Arguments of Television.
Well, I think
Television.
this duality of left and right is about people, they have these strong political opinions. And I think that, they're given only 2 options, left or right, pretty much here in the United States, at least.
Well, I
And,
mean,
and I think that, they're giving these options for opinion because people want to have opinions, so they could, why do you want to have opinions? Just so you could lead, right?
well, it's freedom without choice. Because if I'm left, I hate the right, and if I'm right, I'm doing left. So there is no innate longing for unity. It has to be, the innate longing is in diversity. No 2 fingerprints the same, no 2 people are the same, no 2 views are the same, but there is innate longing for unity.
Not 2 souls are the same.
Yeah. So therefore, the media has created, as George Gerbner mentioned, television. 4 Arguments of the Hill of Television is his great books. That means I tell you what your vision should be. Television, I tell you your vision.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. So we
So
need a
therefore,
paradigm shift,
the
starting.
yeah. So the paradigm shift, we have to go from objective to subjective. We have to go from focus to peripheral vision. So we see everything so we can relate to them. And then also we have to go what? To be self-sufficient rather than a specialized. A specialized person knows a lot about little until he knows everything about nothing. So they cannot communicate or have any innate longing. So therefore, in this passive paradigm shift, we have to go from the food to nutrition. Nutrition, what is the difference between food and nutrition? Nutrition is all assimilative. Food is sometimes accumulative. That's why people get overweight. We have to go from shelter to a home. Home, there is love and innate longing in it. Shelter is just a physical thing. From
Yeah,
education.
So just as like you're saying, there's toxic food with GMOs and pesticides. We need to move away from that to like foods that have vibrancy. Whole foods. We need to go from shelter that's toxic to shelter to a home that is vibrant.
Yeah, home is not just a physical roof over our head; it's also roof over our soul. It has to be home has love in it. Shelter is just a physical track house. So, and education, which is very subjective, has to be educairment. That means, education, which is very objective, it has to become subjective. Like a mother is very subjective toward her kids.
Well, yeah, it also the education system in the United States pretty much became mainstream when Rockefeller gave a lot of money to like create a certain type of public school in the United States, and that public school was basically designed by psychologists who came from the William Wundt Laboratory in Germany, and they were very behavioral oriented scientists. Took the soul out, and then they synced up with Rockefeller, and that's how they created the public education system, and then they expanded it to change to do the medical schools in the United States, and that's when medicine went from naturopathic to allopathic.
Yeah. See what happens. That's why next item I put, we have to go from drugs or pharmaceutical.
Mm-hmm. I think we have a frozen screen here. So we're talking about going from drugs and pharmaceutical to naturopathic ways of healing, and then also changing the energy sources. So our home no longer is run on centralized energy sources in our cities and our communities, and but on synergetic energy sources. I think he has dropped off the meeting, so hopefully he joins again. We'll give him a couple moments. So while we're giving him a few moments, I'll just give some backdrop to why we're talking about economics. You would think that, well, first, the backdrop is that I used to be, probably about 14 years ago, I was transcribing a book on economics for Dr. Mohsen. And oh, hello, you got back in.
Oh, yeah, we got disconnected. So you notice, if you look at medical practice, is not health practice, it's a sick practice. It's based on germ theory of Pasteur. Now, Pasteur and Beauchamp were two adversaries in France that created the modern pharmaceutical. So from medical, we have to go to health, naturopathic. From energy, we have to go to synergy. These are paradigm shift, basic paradigm shift we have to do to get off the grid.
Okay. Yeah, I was explaining a little bit about this when you dropped off, and I mentioned that we were working on transcribing a book about this, and now we're just doing a YouTube video on that book.
Yeah. Well, the book is right there. Actually, I just need somebody who is a good, what do you call the editor to put it together and fund it to publish it. That's a book we wrote about like 15 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. So going on to some of the resources, the
Now,
reference.
this is about economic and entropy system. It's been known. It doesn't matter what kind of economic system we have, whether if it's capitalist or it's a communist or socialist or whichever way you have. Nicholas Georgescu-Roegen was a great thinker, and he wrote this book long time ago, which was Entropy Law and Economic Processes.
Well, yeah. So if you take one, people, part of the divide on the left and the right is like one wants more of a capitalistic system, one wants more of a communist or socialist system, and this divide, does at a fundamental level doesn't really, affect the entropy and the inflation in the society because, it's just a matter of, is it the government or big business getting loans from the central banks, right?
Well, the thing is, anytime usury is introduced, it causes centralization and entropy.
Armin's gonna say hi. Come on. Come on, Armin. Oh, hi. Oh. Anyway, so you're saying what entropy causes centralization?
Entropy, and usury causes entropy because usury also causes centralization.
Right. So in like a communist society, the centralization's with the government, and the capitalist is like with big business. But either way, there's centralization happening.
Yeah, it's because both of them are based on stored energy, entropy, and efficiency. So that's why all of these systems that are created by Renaissance and Industrial Revolution, they all are materialistic, not synergistic. Materialism, it causes materialism and centralization.
Okay. Got it.
Okay. So what happened? The next one, and then later in late 70, Jeremy Rifkin wrote this book, which is very good, and topical, the Cause of Entropy in the Society, and he wrote a few other books based on that, and thankfully he's still alive.
It looks like a forward for this book was the author of the last book.
Well, he was his mentor.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
It was one generation, yeah. That's how he learned his stuff from. And then there is also other Persian writers, that before even Nicholas Georgescu-Roegen wrote about entropy. I have all the entropy books from way back.
So who are the Persian writers, authors?
His name was Bazargan.
How do you spell that?
Bazargan. Bazargan. He wrote a book, The Finite Infinite, Zarre bi Intaha. I have several copies of it because they destroyed it. But that was way back, like 50, 60 years ago. He wrote about entropy.
Who destroyed it?
Well, people, because, we don't want to talk about that, who did it and all that. But again, you go back to Imam Jafar Sadiq, he wrote about entropy, and it's been published in the University of Strasbourg. I have a copy of that too. So
what was Jafar al-Sadiq's book on entropy?
Who?
What was Jafar al-Sadiq's?
Well, it's a book. It's the name is Maqaz Mutafakkir Jahan Shi'ah, because he was the sixth Imam, and what happened, sixth Imam, and a lot of his work is not being propagated by Muslims.
What was the translation of that book, though? The English translation of that title?
The Great Mind of the Great Islamic Mind. That's what the translation is. But this book was actually written originally in University of Strasbourg, that they were researching on his work, because he probably was the greatest Islamic scientist and also the mentor of Avicenna.
Okay. Oh, hold on 1 second. Let me go get Armin. You could talk about. Let me put you on the next slide.
Okay, let's
There.
see
Oh,
what's
there's
next.
me. That's me being a farmer as a kid.
Yeah. So
I
what?
walked in the garden by myself. Mommy.
Now, what happens, it is possible if because all biological functions are not by chemical or by magnicity. When the light comes from the soul, it brings knowledge to a tree to grow. Now, what happened, magnicity is the most human function. All human functions are by magnicity. Therefore,
Okay.
if you increase the magnicity, the previous slide, if you increase the magnicity around the bush, there's two bushes here, one in the ground which produced 7 pounds, the other one produced 70 to 100 pounds of potato in those tires. So therefore, it is possible to increase the magnicity, which is again synergetic process, procedure, and practice to produce a lot more food. Then,
So how was the magnetism of the tire? How did the tire create more magnetism to get more?
the magnetism, is produced by material we include in the soil, like biochar. Because the biochar, which is produced with very low oxygen. And then, also lime rock, which is all of them are paramagnetic. Paramagnetic material, it's like a solar collector. It collects magnetism around the roots, and all of a sudden the plant produces much more. So that's why there's 70 instead of 7, 10 times more production, and we can get rid of the starvation all over the world. So polarity is non-duality. Polarity is male and female. God created everything in male and female and placed innate longing between male and female to be attracted to each other. Duality, they hate each other. See, the duality is fabricated, polarity is created. So polarity is non-duality. That means if you look at duality, it's positive and negative. Look at the science. The positive cancels negative. Left is fragmented from the right. Right is fragmented from the left. So basically, left and right is what? Fragmentation. So that's why God said, "Ihdina sirat al-mustaqim."
Okay, and so previously we were talking about like binary computer language being like a duality, and how, right? We've talked about that before.
Would you repeat that again?
Oh, we've talked about is like binary computer language. Is that a duality?
Yeah, it's a duality because it's, if you look at I was back in 60s, I was trained as a computer and also electronic engineer when I graduated. So back then, the computer was a big house, it wasn't like a calculator. We didn't have a calculator back then either. So what happened, we had to punch cards. I have saved all those cards. But anyway, it was basically off and on. Duality means either yes or no, on and off. So binary system works on either 0 or 1, 0 and 1. That's why computer programmers, they work on binary. Before they used to work on analog, but now the computer system is based on binary system.
I'll say hello.
Now, what?
Hi, do you have any question?
I have French toast in here.
You ate French toast today. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide. I'm probably going to have to wrap this up pretty soon.
Okay, so the thing is, there is the last one, you already talked about this, but that's the same thing. Everything has to be magnetic to have synergetic growth and centropical. It has to be by, let's say we say IQ or we say EQ, but there's something which is golden ratio Q. The quotient of the golden ratio is in all creation, from our hands, fingers, everything. So IQ magnetic farming is really respect the magnetic function in golden ratio. That brings in greenversity and solar architecture.
It looks like Adam just wet his pants in this picture.
Yeah, it stinks. Pew.
Anyways, okay.
Okay, so there is something, it's a perfect justicism in creation. What we do to others, now the others doesn't mean a person. It could be a plant, it could be soil, microorganism of the soil, other animals. What we do to others, which is, if it's entropy or entropy, will be due to us. That's perfect justicism of creation. And whether we realize it or not, but it happens. There is no ifs or buts about it. What we do to the others, any living organism, will be due to us. With our words, with our tones, with our everything we do. Because all of that expression, anything I express something, if I do harm to other living things, even a tree, like, Dr. Masura showed that even if you say a swear word in front of the water, the structure of the water changes.
Yeah, that was a nice book.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. I think it was his photographer that really.
Yeah. If you talk with a very harsh tone in front of the water, the structure of the water changes, and that water would not go in our cell. It's not assimilative, it's accumulative. You can drink all the water, but if my feeling is negative emotion, when I'm holding this bottle, let's say I'm jealous or greedy or this and that, or my tone is not the right tone, is not synergetic tone. No, we'll talk about synergetic, energetic tone some other time, and sound and oscillation and voices. So then it affects the water. The water cell does not dilate to allow that water in, because it's a structure of that is not recognized as the signature of water. Dr. Masura.
Well, mashallah, this was very nice.
Let's see what else is there.
Presentation. That's it. That's all I have today.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and thank everybody for listening today. And if you like this video and want to hear more, please subscribe to this channel and drop a comment for Dr. Mohsen if you have any questions or comments.
Let me suggest another, because it's roots of our pandemic today. Let me offer, I have done other YouTubes on this, the distinction between oscillation and vibration.
Okay,
and it's very extensive. And it's how oscillation destroys vibration. We are vibrating, we don't oscillate. Anytime oscillation, just like Raymond Royal Rife and many others, they prove, when we bring oscillation near a vibration of living organism, it devitalizes it. So all of our pandemic is the result of two things. One is oscillatory pollution, entropy that we have, and also marijuana.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because one destroys the autonomic nervous system, the other one, autonomic nervous function, the other one destroys autonomic function of the body. Autonomic vibratory function of the body. Yeah. So those are very important. And thank you.
Okay, thank you. See you later. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Assalamu alaikum.
Who's that?
Assalamu alaikum.
Who's that?